In a world ruled by power and appearances, Lily finds herself trapped in a cold, loveless marriage to Duke Theodore, a man who refuses to even look her way. Surrounded by scorn, isolated in a castle where no one truly welcomes her, she must navigate betrayal, loneliness, and silent battles. This is the story of a girl who chooses strength over despair and slowly begins to rewrite her fate. It starts with a girl expressing how much she hated a certain guy. We soon learn that he had pushed her away, which hurt her deeply. Despite all the pain he caused, she never wished him dead. That man was Theodore. When he was lying on the ground, bleeding and broken, she cried over him. Her tears washed away all hatred and resentment. Grief consumed her, but beneath it, old feelings began to resurface. Feelings of love she thought had long died. She never left Theodore's side. She realized that the love she once had for him was still alive. And now it flared up again. Apparently, the possibility of losing someone dear reawakened feelings buried deep inside her. The girl's name was Lily Everett, and she had met Theodore Valentino 2 years ago. One day, her father suddenly told her that she would marry Duke Valentino. Lily was shocked. She thought her father had gone mad, especially since he was no longer fully human. Resigned to her fate, Lily accepted the forced marriage. The Valentino family had guarded the northern borders of the Kingdom of Francis for generations, forming a pact with a powerful spirit. But in the past 10 years, a crack had appeared. A few years ago, the former Duke and Duchess disappeared, along with their heir, Camille Valentino. As a result, Camille's younger brother, Theodore, had to take over. Due to the duchy's weakened state, the Valentinos needed help from other noble families. But they were isolated, and at the center of this downfall was the Everett family. Lily suspected that her own family might be responsible for the cracks in the duchy. Now, her father was marrying her off to the very victim of their misdeeds. Her father revealed that Theodore had always been a tough opponent, but now he seemed desperate for support. Through this marriage, the Everetts would provide financial aid, and in turn, gain control over the Valentinos. Lily was to begin bride lessons immediately. Her father said she was at least good for something. With no other option, Lily agreed, though unhappily. She clenched her fists in silent frustration. Her father dismissed her and she left his office at once. While going about her work, her brother Hazen Everett approached and mockingly asked whether Duke Valentino was as handsome as rumored. He said that under normal circumstances, she wouldn't even dare to look at someone like him. He taunted her, saying she had been successfully sold. Lily ignored him, but Hazen grew furious. He picked up a pair of scissors, threatening her and asking how she dared ignore him. Lily was stunned, and he coldly added that she wasn't even a pureblood Everett. Realizing his mistake, Hazen threw the scissors to the floor and bitterly asked if she really thought anything would change after marrying the Duke. He called her an incompetent disgrace. Others in the room were shocked by his behavior, including a nearby maid who didn't know how to react. Lily remained composed. The maid, who seemed kind and new to the castle, quietly handed the scissors back to Lily. Lily thanked her. This one maid was different from the others, but she also knew this kindness wouldn't last. As the maid apologized and asked to continue her tapestry work the next day, Lily permitted her, sensing the girl was new and nervous. Leaving the room, Lily walked down the corridor and saw her other brother, Owen Everett, who was to become the next head of the family. With him stood Lord Lennon. Lord Lennon tried to initiate a conversation with Lily, telling her to just call him brother like Owen did. He complimented her, saying she became more beautiful every day. But Lily wasn't interested in talking to him. In fact, she thought he was mad. If she could, she would cut off his tongue. From behind Lennon, Owen confirmed he had heard about her upcoming marriage. Lily calmly replied that the rumor was true. She was on her way to start her bride lessons. Owen calls Theodore Valentino a creep, saying he's been a nuisance for a long time. He smugly suggests that if Lily's marriage secures control over the Valentino estate, it would be a great victory. Again, he reminds Lily how worthless she is, hoping that at least this time she might serve some purpose. Lily, unsurprised, doesn't react much. She's long known she's just a tool in this house, something owned, not loved. She recalls being called dirty and unworthy as a child, constantly reminded that she must repay everything that had ever been invested in her. Even back then, she was abused, despite being just a little girl. The late Duchess Everett had died long ago, and though the Duke had 2 sons, he needed a daughter for political marriages. Instead of remarrying or having an illegitimate child, he adopted a girl with silver hair, similar to his own. A girl who didn't even know who her real parents were. That girl was Lily. Lord Lennon, a family acquaintance, pats Lily on the shoulder and tells her not to worry. Even if things are difficult with the Duke, he believes she'll still marry him. At first, Lily looks sad, but then she grins faintly and thanks him for the encouragement. Later, alone in her room, Lily collapses to the floor. She wonders when she'll finally escape this hell. She questions whether Duke Valentino will even agree to marry her. If he does, she might finally be free of the Everetts. But would she be happy? She doubts it. The Everetts are ruthless in pursuit of power, while the Valentinos value justice and integrity. Their families have always been at odds, their conflict leaving bloodshed and a trail of corpses behind. She doubts Theodore will be happy with such a marriage, but still, hope flickers in her heart. For 10 years, she endured her life here. She never had the courage to end it. And what kept her going was a tiny, fragile hope that one day, someone would reach out and save her from this misery. In her mind, that person now has a face: Theodore Valentino. As she steps out of her room, she continues thinking about him. She's never seen him before, as there have been no social events where they might have met. She wonders what he's like beyond the rumors. Is he really as kind and charming as people say? Or is he the opposite? Two other girls pass by and gossip about Lily's appearance. She's wearing a charming dress, modest yet elegant, but her thoughts are still consumed by the Duke. Despite never meeting him, she doubts they're compatible. One of her brothers appears and mocks her dress, asking if she really thinks it looks good. He insults her freely. It becomes clear why their father paid so much attention to her outfit today. He wanted Lily to use her physical beauty to attract the Duke. The deep neckline of her dress confirms that. Lily finds it a little amusing and wonders what her brother thinks about all this. Would the Duke even fall for such a shallow tactic? Her brother seems irritated and yells at her, calling her crazy and ordering her back to her room. Calmly, Lily replies that their father sent her to the garden. Her brother scoffs and asks what's the point of her walking around dressed like that with the Duke. She retorts that if he has such a problem with her appearance, he should convince their father to let her wear something else. Furious, her brother shouts, but Lily, pleased to have outwitted him, walks away. As she steps into the grand garden, she regrets not bringing a shawl. Thoughts swirl in her head. Does her father truly believe Duke Valentino will fall for her at first sight? Suddenly, she overhears a conversation nearby. Someone suggests the other person should rest before doing anything else. Curious, Lily peeks around the corner, and what she sees makes her cheeks flush. She has just laid eyes on Theodore Valentino. The man she is supposed to marry stands there, speaking firmly. He tells the red-haired man beside him, named Carmen, that he doesn't need rest, and will get straight to business. He instructs him to follow, walking forward with quiet authority. Lily, hidden behind the corner, can't stop staring. And in that moment, her heart reacts in a way she never expected. Just then, Duke Theodore Valentino and Lily lock eyes for the first time. Something stirs between them, a silent, powerful moment. They couldn't stop looking at each other. Lily, realizing how long he had been staring, grew self-conscious. Embarrassed, she assumed it was because of her revealing clothes. To her surprise, Theodore walked up to her and gently asked if she was cold. Without hesitation, he covered her with his coat. Lily was shocked. She had expected judgment, not kindness. Apparently, her fears about her attire were unfounded. The Duke noticed her silver hair and bright emerald eyes and immediately realized she was Lily Everett. However, he also noted that her outfit wasn't suitable for a walk, making Lily blush with shame. Without further conversation, Theodore turned and told his assistant to follow. As they walked to the carriage, Carmen glanced back at Lily, still stunned and unmoving. Their brief meeting had left a strong impression. Back at the Everett estate, Lily's brother sarcastically congratulated her on her engagement, noting that their father's plan had worked. As Lily sipped her tea, he added cruelly that perhaps Duke Valentino would strangle her on their wedding night. Everything had unfolded as Lily expected. Her father loathed Theodore yet insisted on the marriage. The kingdom was in chaos. The current king lacked the strength to control the nobility. The only families who could help, Delacroix and Albinus, were already under Everett influence. Left with no real options, Theodore had no choice but to accept the engagement. Lily's brother pointed out that the Duke simply wanted to protect the North from collapsing due to the growing cracks. That's why he apologized to Lily, to gain the financial support of the Everetts. He even admitted feeling a bit sorry for Theodore, who had to marry someone like Lily to save his province. He believed Theodore was kind-hearted, the kind of man who would sacrifice his own happiness for his people. But he also warned that once Theodore regained his power, he would no longer be a puppet. He predicted the Duke's first move would be to get rid of his new wife. He continued to insult Lily, saying one day she would disappear, and no one would care. Though Lily was hurt, she barely reacted. Her mind was elsewhere, replaying the memory of her brief moment with Theodore. She remembered how he gently asked if she was cold. Her brother snapped her back to reality, asking mockingly if she was already planning to beg for mercy. Lily didn't understand what he meant. Angrily, her brother grabbed her by the collar and yelled at her to stop pretending. He demanded she beg him to save her, to stop the marriage. Just then, the door swung open. Owen, her older brother, entered and firmly ordered the younger brother to let go of Lily and leave. Owen approached calmly but with authority. The younger brother protested, claiming he had every right to be there. But Owen asked him plainly if he wanted to be dragged out by force. His tone made it clear he wasn't bluffing. Still, the younger one resisted, insisting he wanted to hear what Owen had to say to this fool. His words dripped with contempt. As if responding to some hidden force, Owen suddenly grabbed his brother's hand and again asked him to leave. This time more firmly, yet still polite. After the younger brother finally left, Owen turned to Lily. Unlike the previous verbal abuse, he spoke with a composed tone. He said he didn't expect miracles from her but reminded her to gain control over Duke Theodore. This union was too important for their family to risk failure. Lily quietly promised to fulfill her duty. Owen, now with a more intense look, told her never to forget. Even after marriage, she would still belong to the Everetts. She looked a bit frightened. He reached out, touching her face gently, and whispered that even in death, she would remain part of their family. Lily responded quietly, saying she wouldn't forget. For the first time, Owen complimented her, calling her smart. He wished her good night and left the room. Now alone, Lily sat silently. She reflected on the bitter truth. In this era, aristocratic marriage had been reduced to nothing more than a contract. She remembered that even the previous Duke Valentino had once been bound to a political marriage. Everyone knows that the previous Duke Valentino was supposed to enter into a political marriage with Lady Albinus. But then he fell in love with Viscount Khan's eldest daughter and married her instead. Because of that decision, instead of strengthening their family, the Valentinos lost both power and wealth. The family they were originally going to ally with didn't support them anymore, and their military influence weakened. While other noble houses arranged strategic marriages and gained status, Duke Valentino's reckless actions dragged his house toward crisis. Now, the current duke is forced to marry. In Lily's room, her brother sarcastically comments that she's lucky. Lily looks at him, a bit embarrassed, but he adds that if the Valentino family weren't in such a pitiful state, the Duke would never marry someone like her. Hearing this, Hazen's expression suddenly turns cold again. Lily glances at him and quietly says she understands. The Duke had no other option, and that's why he agreed to marry her. But her brother becomes furious, even though he doesn't seem to understand why himself. Seeing his anger, Lily stands up, walks closer to him in her bridal gown, and with a calm smile, says that even if she's dying, she will never ask him for help. Her words shock him. He's completely speechless, not expecting her to ever say something like that. As she walks past, she mutters that she hates him and their older brother Owen, and hopes they both die. Her brother looks stunned, frozen by her words. Lily continues walking, holding a bouquet. In the distance, she sees the Duke, the man she's about to marry. Her father is already there, waiting to escort her to the wedding. When he sees her, he compliments her beauty and congratulates her on her engagement. Lily smiles faintly, blushes, and thanks him. But deep down, she knows that this is a transaction. Her father is just happy to sell her off to the Duke. She understands the nature of this marriage very clearly. It's nothing but a contract. As she enters the wedding hall, music plays. Her father offers his hand and leads her toward the Duke. Petals are laid out at her feet like a symbolic blessing. She notices the crowd pretending to be joyful, but it all feels fake. The Duke doesn't seem happy either, and Lily thinks he probably feels the same way. They reach the altar. The Duke extends his hand to her, and they stand before the priest, who begins the ceremony. The priest announces that the two are now joined in holy matrimony. Lily silently reflects. Today, she and Theodore Valentino are married, even though neither of them ever wanted this. Later that night, Lily lies in bed. She remembers how the Duke gave her his cloak in the garden and told her to keep it, even if it gets torn. She sits on the bed, lost in thought, convinced the Duke sees her only as the foolish Everett daughter he hates. She's not angry though. In fact, she thinks it would be better if she didn't fall for him and just stayed distant. Still, she recalls their first meeting in the garden. Her heart had fluttered back then. Maybe it was nothing, maybe just her imagination. Suddenly, Duke Theodore enters the room in a loose robe that reveals his well-toned body. Embarrassed, Lily averts her eyes. He walks to the table, pours himself a drink, takes a sip, and glances at her with a smile. Lily, visibly flustered, avoids his gaze. But then, without warning, he walks up to her and starts kissing her. Shocked, Lily doesn't resist. The kiss deepens. Both seem caught in the moment. Theodore takes her hand, but when they pause, Lily asks him to stop. He looms over her and asks with a faint smirk if she really meant that. Lily, feeling overwhelmed, says he's free to do whatever he wants. But he replies that it's not him, it's her who wants this. He starts kissing her neck. She tries to speak, but only manages a soft moan. A visible mark appears on her neck where he kissed her. While he holds her hand, she's lost in the strange feeling. unexpected but not unwelcome. After a moment, Theodore stops, looks at her, then suddenly says, "This should be enough for your father." He gets up and raises his hand as if he's about to stab someone with the scissors. Before doing anything, he says that her father probably won't suspect a thing. Suddenly, Duke Theodore smears his own blood on the bed. It's clear he did this to make Lily's father believe she lost her virginity. Shocked by this act, Lily watches as he throws the scissors aside and says there's no point doing something neither of them wants. It's obvious he isn't thrilled about the marriage either, but it's a necessary move for his family's survival. After executing his plan, Theodore tells Lily they should try to make the most of their time together. But he warns her, once the marriage loses its meaning, everything will change. He adds that they'll divorce easily when the time comes, and until then, they'll just be a couple on paper. His expression makes it clear he's serious about rebuilding his family. Lily reflects on his words and realizes they could part ways at any moment. Sitting on the bed, she understands her sadness isn't just about an unwanted marriage. Somewhere along the way, she developed feelings for Theodore. When their eyes met, it felt like an invisible arrow pierced her heart. That same arrow left behind a scar she doesn't know how to heal. A few days later, Lily's carriage speeds through the ruined streets of Valentino. She looks out and sees devastation, blood on the roads, people hiding in terror. A mother and daughter huddle in a doorway, wounded and exhausted. It's the first time Lily has witnessed the damage caused by the Everett family with her own eyes. Beside her sits Charlotte, her maid. Shocked by the scenes, Lily doesn't get a chance to respond to Charlotte's question before the carriage door swings open. Theodore enters, clearly alarmed, but calms down when he sees all is well. He remarks sarcastically that Lady Everett didn't enjoy the view. Then he tells Lily to hold on. They're almost there and warns her not to look out the window anymore. She tries to say something, but he shuts the door before she can speak. Afterward, Lily assures her worried maid that everything's fine and tells her to sit comfortably. She's grateful Charlotte agreed to accompany her, especially since no other maid would. She recalls how Charlotte cried when she asked to come along on this uncertain journey. Lily had considered refusing, knowing the hardships ahead, but couldn't bring herself to say no. After the Duke's departure, Charlotte comments on how quickly he had come to check on them when he heard a sound from the carriage. Hearing this, Lily is slightly comforted. Eventually, they arrive at the Valentino estate. Theodore opens the door and offers Lily his hand to help her down. She accepts. But as she steps out, she stumbles, and Theodore catches her in his arms. For a moment, they freeze, close enough to kiss. Just then, someone calls out, announcing Theodore's arrival, snapping them back to reality. Embarrassed, Lily blushes deeply. A woman approaches the carriage. Mrs. Annabella Simo, Theodore's aunt and his mother's younger sister. Unmarried and over 40, she acts as the household's mistress in the absence of Theodore's mother. She greets Lily warmly and welcomes her to the family. Lily thanks her and expresses hope for a good relationship. Mrs. Simo then urges Theodore to follow her inside, which he does, addressing her as aunt. Lily follows silently, staring at his back. He seems burdened. Later, a maid escorts Lily to her room and tells her to tug a rope if she needs anything. Lily says she's fine and lets the maid leave. Left alone, Lily reflects on how hard it will be to live like a real couple. She wonders when her life began to unravel. Maybe when her mother's maid spent a night with a wanderer and got pregnant. Her mother never even thought he might leave without a name. Lily calls her mother foolish. Now, Lily decides she won't plan or expect anything anymore. She'll simply exist. But the memory of Theodore cutting his own hand on the very first night keeps resurfacing. Despite everything, her feelings for him remain. That night's memory, when Theodore cut his hand, keeps resurfacing in Lily's mind. She knows whatever feelings are beginning to grow, she must suppress them. A few days pass. The castle is hosting a grand ball. Lily sits quietly, looking elegant but visibly unhappy. She's been in this castle for days, yet the Duke hasn't once looked her way. She wonders if he hates her that much. Watching a lavish event unfold, she suspects the banquet was organized just to impress her former family. Noticing her sadness, Theodore approaches and says it seems she doesn't like the food. Then, looking her straight in the eye, he tells her not to be too familiar with him, as he doesn't intend for their marriage to last forever. He says they're in a partnership neither of them chose, and there's no point in getting emotionally attached. Lily, who had already resolved to keep her emotions in check, responds that she understands completely. Theodore, sipping his wine, as it seems she truly does. After the banquet, Lily returns to her room. Charlotte greets her warmly and, seeing how exhausted she looks, asks if she's okay. Lily admits she didn't expect the event to be so tiring. Charlotte tells her the bath is almost ready and asks her to wait a bit longer. But Lily notices Charlotte's hands are badly wounded, and her expression suddenly changes. Charlotte is confused by Lily's sudden coldness. Then Lily quietly asks if anyone in the castle helps her, Surprised by the question, Charlotte insists she's managing fine and doesn't want Lily to worry. She even says she's strong and doesn't want her mistress to get in trouble over something so minor. But Lily understands what she's really saying, that no one is helping her. When Charlotte tries to change the topic, Lily gently interrupts and says she gets it. Then she begins to undress for the bath. As she sinks into the warm water, she thinks about how this house is full of people who already despise her. Even as she raises her voice, things likely won't improve. Charlotte stands by the tub, holding her mistress's robe, and apologizes for something. Lily calmly asks why she should forgive her, and says instead Charlotte should forgive her. Charlotte, startled, says a mistress should never seek forgiveness from a maid, especially someone like her, an orphan. Lily, saddened, asks if Charlotte wants to return to Everett Castle. Shocked, Charlotte hesitantly asks why she's bringing that up. She then quickly adds that she enjoys being with Lily and deeply values how much Lily cares for her. As Lily bathes, Charlotte confesses tearfully that she has no one else. Lily is surprised by the depth of her emotions and realizes that, just like she found comfort in Charlotte's presence, Charlotte found peace in hers. They're like two wounded creatures, healing each other. Lily says she understands her, and Charlotte continues crying softly. Lily realizes that if Charlotte ever returned to the Everett home, no one would be happy to see her. Quietly, she moves toward Charlotte and embraces her, resting the girl's head on her shoulder. It's clear that both deeply appreciate and care for each other. The next day, Lily walks into the hall and asks the butler to summon all the maids who are supposed to assist Charlotte. Surprised by the unusual request, the butler complies. Soon, all the maids stand gathered. They seem uneasy, sensing trouble. One of them, the bravest, asks if Lily wants something. Calmly, Lily asks her name, Lola, and then questions why she doesn't help Charlotte as expected. She asks if Lola knows what negligence means. Angry, Lily tells them that ignoring Charlotte just because she's the personal maid is childish. Lola responds that she had too much work and couldn't help. She says it's normal for one person to do the job of two in Valentino Castle, especially during hard times. Lily is surprised that the maid is openly trying to challenge her. In that moment, Lily realizes that regardless of her past, she is now the Duchess of Valentino, the lady of this house. She wonders if these maids will not even show her basic respect. Regaining her composure, she replies that if she is unfit to manage the household, she'll accept criticism, but only from her husband or an elder, not from a maid. Lola is left speechless, struggling to justify herself. Just then, an elderly voice cuts through the tension. It's Theodore's aunt. She walks in and visibly displeased, asks the manager to explain what's going on. Lily doesn't expect the woman to take her side, but surprisingly she does. Turning to the maids, she firmly tells Lola that she understands everyone has been busy lately. Mrs. Sima firmly reminds the maids not to forget their duties. Though Lola apologizes, Sima calmly tells them all to perform their work properly going forward. She clarifies this isn't just about Lola, it applies to everyone. The maids have no choice but to obey. Then she turns to Lily and assures her that she's already handled the issue, and the maids will now serve her properly without protest. Lily, however, notices something deeper, that Sima sees herself as the real mistress of the house, the one with true authority. While Lily feels powerless in her new role, she tells Sima that if the maids truly begin helping Charlotte, there won't be any further problems. Sima agrees, stating that she's given them a direct order. She adds that Lily was simply unlucky to be married into this family at such a turbulent time. Trying to sound kind, Sima says that adjusting must be hard, but Lily replies that she'll do her best. Then, Sima unexpectedly mentions she has an offer for her. Lily, surprised, asks what it is, and Sima suggests she go inspect the province. To Lily, it sounds like another attempt to humiliate her. Overwhelmed and exhausted, Lily quietly thinks that death might be easier than this life. She wonders what would happen to Charlotte if she were gone. She knows she can't return to Everett Castle, but she can't stay here either. Still forcing a smile, she says she'll do the inspection, but only once she's fully prepared. Seema, surprised by Lily's cheerful tone, says nothing more. As Lily walks away, both the manager and Sima watch her. She appears confident, but it's all an act. Deep down, she's struggling. Later, once Lily is ready, a carriage arrives, with Duke Theodore watching her silently. After a short ride, they arrive at their destination. Two young men accompany her for protection. As they guide her through the area, Lily sees the harsh reality: severe poverty, hunger, hopelessness. People are eating scraps. Even though she wore her simplest dress, it's still silk, and she realizes how out of place it looks in front of starving villagers. She starts distributing food with her attendants. People accept the bread gratefully. But suddenly, a stone flies through the air and hits her. A man screams, calling her a witch and cursing her as the cursed spawn of the Everett family. The guards quickly seize him. But the man keeps yelling, saying he doesn't care if he burns in hell. Hell, kill the witch anyway. He accuses her and her family, her father and so-called demon brothers, of being the cause of all their misery. Lily is stunned. She drops the food she was handing out. Around her, every face shows only contempt. They all hate her. And though she came just to help, they see only the name Everett. As night falls, Charlotte sees Lily looking pale and exhausted, with shadows under her eyes. Gently, she asks if her mistress is okay and offers warm milk. She's worried because Lily often skips dinner. Lily assures her she's fine and promises she'll start eating better tomorrow. Charlotte makes her promise, and Lily nods. After Charlotte leaves, Lily sits in silence, remembering the glares of the people during the inspection. Even when she tried to help, it only felt like an insult to them. She feels helpless but also determined. Something has to change. She opens a box of jewelry filled with expensive rings and brooches, part of her dowry. She decides to keep only a few pieces and sell the rest. She knows her father only gave them to flaunt the family's wealth. She could give the money to the steward to help the people. But she also knows they already call her a hypocrite. If she sells them so soon after the wedding, it could only make things worse. It would have been humiliating for the Duke if his new wife acted recklessly, and he obviously wouldn't be happy about it. The girl decides there's only one proper way to use that money. She opens another jewelry box she brought along and finds a magical pendant, one that Owen, her brother, had given her. She recalls him saying that if she ever wanted to secretly spy on Valentine's family, this pendant could transform her into anything she could imagine. She picks up the pendant, thinking she never expected to use one of her brother's bizarre ideas, but at least she'll use it for a good cause. She plans to disguise herself as a maid or guard and use the money from her jewelry to buy food for the poor. It seems like a good plan, but time passes and we see it wasn't so great after all. At the dining table, Duke Theodore tells her he heard she sold all her jewelry. She tries to drink her tea calmly, but she's distracted. She had paid the merchant to stay silent, but he spilled everything. In the reflection of her teacup, we see her shocked face. Her hands tremble slightly with fear. She tells the Duke she plans to buy new jewelry to replace the old, but she knows it's a lie. The Duke says she didn't need to sell anything. Despite their financial struggles, the Valentino family still owns the North. He explains that the money allocated to her should have been enough to buy whatever she wanted without causing a scandal. She thinks if it had only been about money, she wouldn't have gone this far. She simply apologizes and promises to be more careful in the future. But when she looks at her husband, she notices something is off. He's unusually pale. She remembers hearing that the spirit he contracted with caused him trouble. Maybe that's still affecting him. Theodore gets up and says that's all he wanted to say. Before leaving, he remarks that she must have sold her jewelry out of shock at the state of the province, something he considers very typical of the Everett family. She watches him go, stunned, realizing he figured out her entire plan. Before exiting, he tells her he won't show her anything so unpleasant again and slams the door. She feels crushed. Even her good intentions weren't appreciated. He didn't even ask if she was afraid. After all, the locals had nearly strangled her in a fit of rage. She wonders if it would have been better if they had killed her so the Duke could rid himself of a burden without getting his hands dirty. Late at night, she lies awake, unable to sleep. Quietly, she slips out of bed so as not to wake Charlotte, and heads outside for a walk. In the garden, she's surprised to see Theodore standing near a tree, gazing into it. Looking closer, she hears him speaking to the tree, as if talking to his brother. He says that if his brother were alive, everything would be different. Shocked by the word brother, she tries to hide, but a sound gets her away. Theodore turns around, his face tear-streaked, and asks Lily what she's doing out here. She tries to explain, but he doesn't let her. He steps closer, demanding answers. A bit nervous under his intense gaze, she says she was just out for a walk. He doesn't believe her and insists she came to spy on him, crying. She denies it, though it's clear she can't defend herself well. He grabs her wrist and pulls her closer, warning her that wandering the castle like this isn't wise. He tells her there's nothing here worth her curiosity. After calming down, he says he finds it hard to believe she would walk around alone at night without her maid. Lily says he's free to think what he wants. He then takes her hand and says they need to go back. Inside the castle, Lily asks him to slow down. When he turns around, he sees she's exhausted. She herself realizes she simply can't match his pace. The Duke tells her not to wander the castle alone at night again. Lily looks at him, surprised. He actually seems concerned. As strange as it sounds, she realizes she just wanted to talk to him more. She bids him good night and returns to her room. Morning has already arrived, and though she lies on her bed, she hasn't slept a bit. She's exhausted, not from walking, but from seeing Duke Valentino in such a vulnerable state. Charlotte then approaches her bed and asks if she wants breakfast or to wash up first. Lily chooses to wash first and have fruit later. At that moment, Charlotte brings her fruit, but notices again that she didn't finish eating. Charlotte asks her to promise she'll eat more during the second breakfast. Lily happily agrees. She then tells Charlotte to ask the merchant to visit in the afternoon, pretending she needs to buy something. Though in reality, it's part of a lie about buying jewelry. One maid, Jenna, is behind her. The girl feels somewhat relieved that Jenna doesn't pay much attention to her, though she senses Jenna doesn't like her, like most people in the castle. The merchant finally arrives with jewelry. The girl criticizes the collection, thinking to herself how he betrayed her last time by reporting everything to Theodore, despite being paid for silence. She remembers he once said the next piece would be the last, so she asks to see it. He presents a green apple-colored necklace, which the girl secretly finds beautiful but pretends not to like. Suddenly, Theodore enters and says if she doesn't like it, he'll buy it. Both the girl and merchant are shocked. The Duke instructs the merchant to leave the pendant and assures him the steward will handle the payment. The girl tries to thank Theodore, but he simply walks away, clearly doing it only to maintain appearances. Later, the girl visits Mrs. Simo, who informs her that the day after tomorrow is the death anniversary of Camille, Theodore's brother. The girl finally understands why Theodore had cried under the tree. Mrs. Simo asks if she knows how Camille died. The girl answers vaguely, and the woman explains that Camille died during a Fisher event, after losing both their sister and brother-in-law in the same way. Mrs. Simo seems suspicious, possibly hinting that the Everett family had something to do with these deaths. The girl realizes this could mean Everett had learned to control the cracks, something she never thought possible but believes her father might have figured out. Simo says Camille was a kind, well-loved young man who adored Theodore, and his death devastated him. She explains a memorial ceremony will be held, and although normally the mistress of the house would handle it, the girl will be in charge this time. She stresses the event must be flawless. The girl agrees. Back in her room, she removes the necklace Theodore gave her and reflects. That night, she had truly wanted to comfort him, even though it wasn't her place. Mrs. Simo's words serve as a warning to stay away from Theodore emotionally. The girl tells herself to remember her place and tries to suppress her feelings. She wonders why she never felt the same concern for others like Owen or Lennon, but she does care for Charlotte, and strangely for Theodore. She tells herself to lock these feelings away, imagining a box inside her where they'll never escape. If she names them, they'll only hurt more. The scene shifts to the day of the ceremony. People mourn Camille and whisper about how unfair life is, that good men like Camille and Theodore suffer while the Everett family thrives. One person hushes another, worried Lily might overhear. Theodore approaches Lily and asks why she's standing in the rain instead of finding cover. He holds out an umbrella to her. After the ceremony, they return to the castle, where an unexpected encounter takes place. A certain girl flustered and happy to see Theodore again. At that moment, the girl looked genuinely happy that she got to meet him. Right after, she introduced herself and said her name was Adeline Albanus. After that, Adeline looked straight at the protagonist and asked if she was correct in assuming that they hadn't met before. The protagonist responded with a small bow and said that Adeline must be the daughter of Duke Albanus. She added that she had heard about Adeline and was genuinely pleased to meet her in person. Hearing this, Adeline walked up to Theodore and wrapped her arm around him. She said she and Theo had been close friends since childhood, so close that they had no secrets between them. But even as she said it, she seemed unsure and asked Theodore if that was true. Some time ago, there had been strong rumors that Adeline would marry Theodore. But as far as the protagonist knew, Duke Albanus was against it. Realizing this, the protagonist thought that maybe, once she divorced her husband, Adeline could marry him. But that could only happen if the Duke gave his permission. Thinking about the possibility that Adeline might steal her husband made the protagonist sad. Seeing her face, Adeline walked up and said she looked pale. She asked if she was feeling unwell. The protagonist looked at Adeline and her husband, and couldn't help but think how lucky Adeline was compared to her. Immediately, she felt guilty for even having such thoughts. Almost like punishing herself for it, she mentally questioned what she had just thought. Right after, Lily turned her gaze away from Adeline. Seeing this, Adeline commented again that she didn't look well at all, said her face was pale. Lily insisted she was fine and told her they could catch up on old times, just without her. She added that she had to leave. With that, she headed straight for the exit. Theodore silently watched her go, confused by his wife's sudden sharp reaction. Later, Lily sat alone in another room near the fireplace, sipping tea, thinking about everything that had just happened. She wondered if she had taken the place that was actually meant for Adeline. And just then, it was as if a ghost appeared beside her. The ghost whispered that this is just how things were. Maybe Adeline could comfort Theodore in ways Lily couldn't. Lily begged the ghost to stop speaking. It hurt too much to hear these things. Suddenly, one of the maids entered the room. She asked if Lily would like to go to bed earlier than usual. She had brought lavender incense, which might help her sleep. Her words gave Lily a little calm. She agreed, said it sounded nice, and asked her to light the incense. The maid nodded and lit the incense while Lily got into bed. Once done, Lily softly thanked her. Hearing those words, Charlotte blushed a bit and said she was always happy to help her lady. She then said goodnight. Even with the incense, Lily couldn't sleep. In the middle of the night, she got up from bed and walked to a table in her room. She opened a drawer and took out some medicine. Then she poured a large number of pills into her hand and swallowed them all. As if instantly she was transported into a dream world. She knew this was another dream. Looking around, she wondered what kind it would be this time. If it was another nightmare with her brothers or Lernan, she was ready to destroy them. Because in her dreams, she made the rules. Suddenly, someone called her name. She turned around and saw Theodore standing close, smiling. He was near her face. Shocked, Lily immediately pushed him away and stepped back, ready to attack if needed. She warned him not to come near her. Confused, Theodore asked what was wrong and begged her to stop. Clearly, he didn't understand anything. But Lily didn't care. She had just one question. Why was Theodore still appearing in her dreams? She forced herself to wake up. When she did, her face was full of fear and frustration. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Sitting in bed, she was still crying, trying to calm herself down. She told herself it was just a dream. As Lily reached for her mug of tea, she suddenly froze. Strange footsteps echoed behind her. Startled, she turned around and saw a figure entering her room. It was her husband, Theodore. His expression was dark, his eyes full of mistrust and pain. Seeing him like that, Lily immediately thought he might be drunk. She tried to tell him that this was her room, not his, but Theodore stumbled closer, unsteady on his feet. He tried to say her name, but was too intoxicated and collapsed into her arms. Shocked, Lily helped him sit down, concerned by his condition. She considered calling Charlotte or a maid, but before she could move, Theodore suddenly burst into laughter and muttered that he'd lost his mind. Lily stared at him, confused. Why had he come here? As he continued talking, she gently touched his face, unsure why, but feeling tears welling up. Every time she looked at Theodore, her heart ached, so much so that sometimes she wished it would stop beating. Ever since she first saw him at Everett Castle, she feared that loving him would only lead to heartbreak and sorrow. She knew she shouldn't expect anything from him, nor could she offer anything in return. Still, she couldn't stop the feelings. Holding his face, she tried to say something, but the hardest part was realizing someone had become special to her, someone she knew wouldn't feel the same. And yet, she didn't want this moment to end. She kissed Theodore gently on the forehead. He rested his head on her chest for a second, then suddenly recoiled, as if jolted back to reality. Without a word, he staggered out of the room, covering his face, muttering that he was insane. Lily watched him stunned. Theodore turned away and said it wouldn't happen again. He tried to leave but stumbled. Lily grabbed his hand, begging him not to go, not to leave her alone. Pressing against his shoulder, she admitted, in her heart, she wasn't Duke Everett's real daughter. She wasn't tied to monsters or schemes. She told him he could stay with her if he wanted, but Theodore remained cold. He said that if something like this happened again, the outcome would be different. Then, pulling his hand away, he accused her of playing a game. Confused and hurt, Lily asked what he meant. Theodore, not trusting her, claimed her family had trained her to seduce him. He mocked her, saying it was a pity her plan didn't work. Lily tried to defend herself, but he cut her off, saying she tried to attract him from the very first meeting in the garden. Embarrassed and ashamed, Lily blushed and tried to explain, but he didn't let her finish. He insisted everything was planned. She began crying, saying it wasn't true. For a moment, Theodore seemed to believe her, but quickly accused her again, demanding to know what it felt like to seduce someone she didn't even like. Lily denied trying to seduce him. Suddenly, Theodore grabbed her shoulder and said her words were unconvincing. Then, holding her face, he told her he'd give her what she wanted. Without warning, he pulled her into a kiss. Lily was stunned. Her face showed she hadn't expected this. But Theodore didn't stop. As he kissed her more deeply, her body began to respond, and their physical closeness intensified. After kissing her passionately, Theodore pulled away and simply gazed at Lily. She didn't resist, and returned his look with equal passion. Then, Lily suddenly dropped to her knees in front of him. Watching her, the Duke arrogantly asked if she wanted to talk about what it felt like to kiss a man she didn't even like, implying Lady Everett didn't seem to mind it either. Lily remained silent. Theodore smirked and asked if she thought she could calmly fulfill her duties as his wife every night. At those words, Lily clenched her fists and struck him hard across the face, leaving a visible red mark. He was stunned by her outburst. Shaking, Lily tearfully told him he knew nothing about her or the situation. She broke down crying again, still haunted by false accusations. Theodore covered his face and, still smirking, remarked that he didn't believe a daughter of Duke Everett could ever want to sleep with him. He then coldly apologized for his rudeness and slammed the door as he left. His harsh words shattered Lily. She cried harder, gasping for air and feeling as if she were to blame. She even began to think she might be better off as a heartless monster like her father. As dawn broke, Lily sat on the floor, still crying and lost in despair, wondering why all this was happening to her. After the incident, Theodore's attitude towards her turned even colder. One day, Lily approached him, saying she had something important to share. Theodore, disinterested, said he was busy. Only when she insisted it wouldn't take long did he ask her to speak. Briefly, she told him that, unlike her father and brothers, she never intended harm. She hadn't wanted this marriage, and her father had forced her into it. She only wanted to be of help to Theodore and his family. Still, the Duke looked at her with distrust and said he only listened out of curiosity, not care. He added that if she wanted to deceive him, she should at least do it better. Though she did seem sincere, she explained that Theodore was often away for weeks or months on the front lines dealing with cracks in the realm. His absence made her feel isolated and invisible, especially as she was excluded from family events and mistreated by the servants. Even Mrs. Seymour ignored the abuse. Once, Lily asked Theodore if he could skip a ball in the capital so she could stay and tend to the greenhouse, distributing herbs to those in need. But he shut her down, coldly reminding her she wasn't the Duchess, just Lily Everett. Another time, she asked him to stay with her during a party, but he refused to even let her touch him, accusing her of ulterior motives. Realizing that Theodore would never take her side, no matter the situation, broke her. During one of their arguments, he reminded her that he had created her and that she belonged to him until death. These words made Lily reflect on her name, her existence. To others, she felt like a shell, beautiful and obedient on the outside, hollow inside. Despite everything, she knew Theodore had married her to protect his family's assets. It was a forced union that neither of them wanted, and it led them both to a place they never intended to be. Lily's struggles didn't end. She had feelings for a man, Theodore, who despised her and her entire family. Despite knowing it was pointless, she still hoped for change. That was her true misery. Eventually, she gave up. But a year and a half later, something unexpected happened. One day, while standing by a window, Lily rehearsed what she wanted to say to the Duke. Then, gathering courage, she went to his room. A maid seemed surprised to see her and informed Lily that Theodore had suffered a serious head injury during a battle near a crack in his duchy. The room reeked of medicine, and the maid explained he had lost a lot of blood. Though he was now stable and recovering quickly, Lily, worried, tried to hide her emotions, but it was clear she cared. She turned to leave, not wanting Theodore to see her. The maid asked her to wait until he woke up, but Lily declined, saying it would be better if he didn't see her at all. Just as she was about to leave, Theodore woke up and spotted her. He looked at her with confusion. Lily, equally surprised, greeted him, but Theodore remained silent. When she apologized for disturbing him, he stared at her and asked, "Who are you?" Shocked, Lily apologized again, unsure if she'd misunderstood. Theodore, still staring, seemed genuinely lost. The maid was stunned too and asked if he truly didn't remember his own wife. Theodore looked at Lily and asked again, was she really his wife? The maid explained they had been married for over a year. But Theodore couldn't recall it and clutched his head, clearly distressed. The healer, also present, finally suggested what was happening: partial amnesia. Theodore remembered most of his life, but nothing about Lily. Lily was stunned. The healer suggested that simple conversation might help restore his memory, but Lily had darker thoughts. Maybe Theodore's hatred was so deep he wanted to forget her. Then Theodore smiled softly and asked Lily to come closer. Despite her hesitation, knowing how cold he'd always been, he insisted. She approached and took his hand, but it didn't trigger any memories. He then asked for her name. "Lily," she replied. Smiling, he told her it was a beautiful name. She added, honestly, that before the wedding she was known as Lily Everett. Theodore began to realize that, while he couldn't remember Lily, he somehow still recalled the wrongs her family had done to him. When he heard her name, he was surprised and visibly confused. Studying her silver hair and peridot eyes, he said nothing. Lily asked if he truly remembered nothing. He admitted it was true. She told him that if he wanted to know who she was, he should ask someone else. It would help him decide how to treat her. As she turned to leave, Theodore grabbed her arm, asking her to stay. But Lily insisted, saying she'd rather go. Even then, he gently pulled her toward him and stared into her eyes. Worried, the Duke asked if he had ever heard her in the past, then quickly followed up by asking how they ended up married. Seeing her troubled face, he asked if it was too painful to talk about. Lily confirmed it was and said she wouldn't explain because even she had a sense of dignity. Concerned by her expression, he finally let her go. Lily hurried out, while Theodore stared silently at her back. Later, in his study, the Duke sat with a book when a maid reported that the Duchess didn't want to see him. Annoyed, he slammed the book shut. He began to recall vague memories of visiting the Everett estate about 2 years ago, but still couldn't piece everything together. He remembered asking a servant once why he had married Lily. Apparently, it had been a political agreement to benefit his family. Turning to the maid, he asked if her name was Charlotte. She blushed and confirmed it. Then, unexpectedly, Theodore asked her to take him to the Duchess's room. Though surprised, Charlotte agreed. Once they reached the room, another maid reported that Lily had just left. Theodore was shocked. He believed the Duchess should never go out unaccompanied. When asked if Lily was truly alone, the maid stayed silent, her head lowered. Eventually, she admitted that Lily often went out alone and that no one besides Charlotte ever offered to accompany her. Theodore, clearly displeased, said they'd discuss it later. Turning to Charlotte, he suspected she might know where Lily went. Charlotte hesitated but confessed that Lily often walked by the river outside the city, though she wasn't sure about today. The Duke looked thoughtful, realizing Lily might have secrets of her own, and he intended to uncover them. He entered Lily's room without her permission, surprising Charlotte, and began looking through her belongings. She was shocked when he even touched her jewelry. He opened a box and found a beautiful emerald necklace. It sparked a faint memory. He recalled a girl wearing it but couldn't picture her face. Then he noticed a painting on the table. Holding it, he was amazed by its beauty. Charlotte informed him that the Duchess had painted it herself. Hearing this, Theodore stared at the landscape, quietly murmuring that everything was beginning to make more sense. Theodore found himself surprised that his wife had such talents and hobbies. He had never imagined Lily to be someone who painted or did such meaningful things. Charlotte reflected on how Duke Theodore Valentino usually acted with kindness toward everyone, except his wife. With Lily, he always seemed cold, as if merely tolerating her presence in the house. As he continued searching Lily's room, the Duke came across a jar of pills. He raised it, asking Charlotte what they were. Fear crossed her face. She hadn't wanted him to discover them. Though hesitant, she admitted what the pills were for. Theodore fell silent, clearly disturbed. The scene then shifted to a different moment. A young red-haired woman with green eyes was distributing potatoes to poor villagers. They spoke highly of her, praising her for bringing them food, and for last winter when she gave out blankets. They credited her for saving their families. The people believed that ever since she began helping, their lives had improved. The frequency of dangerous cracks and monster attacks had lessened, and they saw this as a result of the Duke's growing power. It turns out that the red-haired woman was Lily, reincarnated in a different body. She had chosen to help others anonymously after being harshly judged in her former life. Despite knowing her marriage to Theodore would likely end soon, especially now that his family no longer needed hers, she continued her charitable work. As Lily prepared to leave the village, a grateful resident asked if she would return. Lily nodded, promising to bring fruit next time. The resident tried to stop her, saying she had done enough, but Lily insisted on keeping her word. Suddenly, a sinister male voice interrupted the peace, commanding others to step aside. Lily recognized the voice immediately. It belonged to her brother, Hyson. She turned to see him humiliating commoners, calling them insects from the domain of Verona and mocking them. She was shocked. Hyson had always sent men to spy on the duchy, but never openly acted with such violence. One of the villagers made a slight comment, and Hyson exploded with rage. Drawing his sword, he threatened them. Either they'd lose their tongues or their lives for mocking the Everett family. Furious, he asked if they were ready to choose. The crowd responded angrily. They asked who Hyson thought he was to punish them, claiming only their lord had the right to pass judgment. Some insisted they hadn't even said anything deserving of punishment. But then, one bold resident shouted that even the dogs on the street know the Everett household is the devil's lair. That was when a sharp-eyed onlooker noticed something familiar. Hyson's hair, a feature unmistakably tied to the Everett family. A man suddenly declared that this young man was the son of Duke Everett. Hyson, who had been grinning arrogantly, sheathed his sword and turned to the crowd. With disdain, he asked if this was true, mocking them for only realizing it now. He called them a bunch of dumb cockroaches and reminded everyone that they had only two options, throat or tongue. Then he chose one of the men who had insulted his family, the most extreme of them, and prepared to make an example out of him. The crowd trembled in fear. No one could speak or decide. Hyson, growing annoyed, taunted the man for falling silent, asking mockingly if he had swallowed his tongue after speaking so boldly before. Watching this unfold, the protagonist, his sister in disguise, was deeply disturbed. She realized she could no longer stay back and watch. She stepped forward and addressed Hyson, calling herself Lee, a servant of Duke Valentino's castle. She humbly apologized for interfering but also sincerely asked him to forgive the townspeople. She explained that they weren't properly educated and had suffered constant attacks from magical beings for over a year. Their bitterness had made them speak rashly, she said, and asked him to show mercy. Her words made Hyson pause, But then that same crazed smile returned. He unsheathed his sword again and pointed it at her throat. Still, he praised her boldness and manners for a mere servant. The protagonist, unfazed, calmly thanked him for the compliment. Hyson leaned in, laughing, then suddenly pulled her close, staring into her eyes with a twisted look. He asked if this was her new hobby, playing brave. The girl froze, hoping the magic pendant that altered her appearance was still working. Hyson then grabbed her hand and dragged her away. Around a corner, he shoved her against the wall and, staring into her face, demanded she drop the disguise. He had figured out who she really was. Taking a deep breath, she removed the pendant and transformed back into herself. Hyson watched, his expression unreadable. Now exposed, she was crushed. But Hyson began firing questions. Why was she walking around the city disguised as a maid when she was a duchess? She refused to answer and said it was for her own reasons. Suddenly, Hyson grabbed her hands and tied them, clearly unhinged. She was shocked and asked why he was doing this. He demanded to know if she was really going to marry Lennon Chester. She snapped back that it was none of his business. But Hyson, even more furious, shouted that it had always been his business, that he would always control her life. Then he prepared his horse to take her away. But a voice shouted from behind, commanding him to stop. Both turned. A rider approached fast. It was Duke Theodore. He had figured out where Lily was and had come for her. Theodore's expression darkened when he saw her bound hands. He approached furiously and confronted Hyson, demanding to know what he was doing. Lily stood behind Theodore, shaken. Hyson, unimpressed, sneered and asked Theodore why he cared. This surprised the Duke, who asked what Hyson just called Lily. With a mocking smile, Hyson made circles near his head, asking if Theodore was insane. He couldn't believe Theodore was defending Lily, the woman he supposedly despised. Like she was precious. These words struck a nerve in Theodore. He seemed momentarily uncertain. Lily worried that if he confessed his memory loss now, it could be used against him by her father and Owen. Meanwhile, Lily worked quickly to free herself. Once untied, she stood beside Theodore and defended him. She reminded her brother that being her sibling didn't give him the right to treat her this way and told him firmly to stop. Hyson's reaction wasn't amusing at all. Seeing what happened, he looked at his sister in disbelief. Lily didn't understand why he was so surprised. She didn't think it was a big deal. Turning to the Duke, she quickly explained that Hyson was only joking and assured him there was nothing serious going on. But her words didn't convince Theodore. Visibly alarmed, the Duke grabbed Lily by the shoulders. He asked how she could take it so lightly, insisting this wasn't a prank. According to him, her brother's behavior was unacceptable. When Lily still insisted it was just a joke, Theodore snapped, asking what kind of person would make that kind of joke with a human being. Lily stared at her husband, stunned. She had never seen him so worried about her. It felt unfamiliar. She wondered if he was truly the same man from before she lost her memory. Would he have even reacted like this? Would he have just ignored it? As these thoughts swirled, she noticed his hands still gripping her shoulders and Hyson watching tensely. Realizing she had no other way out, she put her desperate plan into action. She shut her eyes and began holding her breath. Her body trembled as her consciousness slipped. Theodore and Hyson rushed to grab her, their figures growing blurry. Lily felt like she was drowning. Suddenly, she woke up in bed. Her maid, Charlotte, was beside her, panicked and urging her to breathe slowly. Lily clutched her throat, finally taking in air. Her plan had worked. She finally rid herself of Hyson. Just then, Duke Theodore entered the room. To her surprise, he seemed relieved and addressed her gently as Madame. He approached her bed and studied her face with concern. When he sat beside her, she flinched slightly, but he meant no harm. He simply asked how she felt and gently touched her hand. "I'm fine," she replied softly. Theodore's expression tightened. He admitted he was terrified when she stopped breathing. The doctor advised him to keep a close watch on her, so he requested she not skip future checkups. Seeing his genuine concern, Lily agreed. Then she quickly asked if her brother had left. The Duke told her that Hyson was no longer in Veronis and had likely returned to his residence in Salisbury. Lily was shocked. She didn't even know he had a personal estate. He had always prided himself on being part of the Everett family, never pursuing individual possessions. This sudden shift in behavior felt suspicious. Deep in thought, Lily began to wonder if her family was hiding something. She didn't share her concerns with Theodore, brushing it off by saying her brother had always been both cruel and oddly playful. The Duke, surprised by her comment, simply nodded. Then he gently suggested she get some rest, offering to stay if she wanted. But Lily, looking overwhelmed, quickly said no. Caught off guard by the rejection, Theodore stared at her silently. Realizing she'd sounded too harsh, Lily clarified that she just needed to be alone for a while. The Duke smiled slightly, relieved that it wasn't personal, and apologized for not understanding. As he turned to leave, he told her to rest. Lily responded by telling him to rest too. Just as he was walking out, he paused and asked for a small favor: if she could address him by his name the next time they met. His gentle tones startled both Lily and Charlotte. When Charlotte was finally alone with her mistress, she confessed how scared she had been. Seeing Lily pass out so suddenly had nearly stopped her heart. Right after that, Charlotte asked her mistress if she was all right. Lily gave a small smile and replied that she hoped so. Charlotte was confused by her answer, but Lily, still smiling, added that she had actually planned to faint. She explained that there was a certain way to do it, and offered to tell Charlotte if she was curious. Hearing this, Charlotte blushed, looked directly at her mistress, and asked her never to do something like that again. Embarrassed, Lily agreed and promised not to repeat it. Charlotte was pleased and made Lily promise again, to which Lily naturally agreed. Still blushing, Charlotte turned away, and Lily simply stared at her maid's back with a quiet smile. Then Charlotte brought a tray with warm soup for Lily. She mentioned it might have cooled down a bit, but Lily wasn't bothered. She said she'd eat it anyway. At that moment, Lily recalled Theodore's words before leaving her room, how he asked her to call him by his name. She couldn't stop thinking about it. She remembered the times he used to call him impatiently, sometimes with hope, other times with despair. But now she realized it was all pointless. That thought hurt her deeply and even brought her to tears. She believed there was no point in opening up to the Duke, thinking he'd eventually figure out the truth, that she was just a toy to him. She assumed his kindness was only temporary, a result of his memory loss, like sunlight that appears and vanishes. Meanwhile, in Duke Valentino's office, he sat in silence, sighing deeply as he recalled the moment Lily collapsed into his arms, unmoving, as if lifeless. Helson, Lily's younger brother, had panicked and shouted that she was back to her usual tricks. But Theodore ignored him, focused only on Lily's condition. Helson kept talking and told Theodore she had planned to faint. He also warned him to be more careful with her, but Theodore didn't believe it at first. Frustrated, Helson insisted that Lily had a habit of drawing attention this way. Theodore was stunned by the accusation. Then, Helson brought up the looming divorce and asked if Theodore even cared anymore. Theodore was shocked. He hadn't expected that. Seeing his reaction, Helson questioned him directly. Wasn't he planning to divorce Lily? Because once he did, she'd be forced to marry Lennon Chester, whom Helson called a bastard from the Chester family. Helson continued bitterly, saying her life was miserable enough already. And now, on top of the engagement, she'd be married to Chester. He even mentioned that Theodore hadn't spent the wedding night with her. He asked if Theodore realized what kind of consequences awaited Lily if she ended up with Chester. Back in the present, Theodore stared at the pills he had found in Lily's room. The weight of it all hit him, especially what Helson had said. The idea of Lily being married off to someone like Lennon Chester disturbed him deeply. Overwhelmed, Theodore rang the bell and summoned his servant, instructing him to call Calvin and wait in the library. Soon Calvin arrived. He asked if the Duke had regained his memory. Theodore said no. Calvin, surprised, asked why he'd been called. Theodore replied that he wanted to know about the kind of man he was before the memory loss. Specifically, how he had treated Lily and what kind of conversations they had. He gently asked Calvin to share what he knew. Calvin hesitated, then pulled a chair and began. He said that for a man of the Valentino family, Theodore's treatment of Lily had been reasonable. However, when comparing that to the life Lily had led, it was ridiculous. Still, Calvin didn't believe the Duke had been particularly cruel. He thought it was fair, considering Lily was from the Everett family. But then Theodore interrupted. Calmly but firmly, he said Lily was no longer part of the Everett family. She was now part of the Valentino household. Lily was now part of both the Dewey and Valentino families. At this point, Calvin seemed completely uninterested in the conversation, lazily swaying in his chair. Still, he casually remarked that the Duke was suffering for nothing because of this woman. Hearing that, Theodore looked surprised and asked why he thought so. Calvin replied that the story Theodore had shared seemed mysterious to him. It was difficult to tell who was right and who was wrong, which is why he believed it would be better to wait until the Duke regained his memories. Calvin also warned Theodore not to get too close to Lily. He feared the Duke might regret it. Theodore was even more intrigued now and asked Calvin to tell him everything he knew. According to the Duke, he was curious because he would eventually have to make a serious decision. Calvin sighed, took out his gum, and finally agreed to share what little he knew. He began by saying that Theodore and Lily had first met 2 years ago at Duke Everett's castle. That's when strange things began to happen. Things Calvin still didn't fully understand. He admitted that he was usually too busy to pay attention to everything. But a few months ago, something serious occurred. Apparently, some servants started leaving dead birds and rats near Lily's window or just outside her door. Shocked, Calvin questioned one of the maids and learned that this had been going on for over half a year. To Calvin, it all seemed bizarre. He wasn't sure if he should tell the Duke, but eventually decided to handle it himself, hoping it wouldn't happen again. After hearing all this, Theodore fell silent. The words struck him hard. He began wondering if he had been to blame for all of Lily's suffering. It dawned on him that she had endured constant, quiet abuse. Servants whispering behind her back, masking their irritation with polite smiles. And she had endured it all in silence. 2 years is a long time, he thought. Wounds inflicted over that span don't heal easily. But perhaps the truth wasn't so complicated. Maybe the darkness inside her ran far deeper than he had imagined. A sudden conviction took hold of him. He remembered something his old teacher once said: the essence of suffering lies within the person themselves. Even with a piece of bread in hand, a person still desires more. Greed, hatred, and envy, these were the roots of misery, deepening pain in the human heart. Humanity, he thought, had never truly learned how to separate itself from these emotions. Then, another thought struck him. Something he desperately wanted to ask himself before he lost his memory again. Why had he been so cruel to Lily? That question had haunted him from the very first day they met. Just then he recalled something Calvin had said. On the day Theodore visited Lily's family castle and met her for the first time, he had confessed to Calvin the odd feeling he experienced. Calvin had understood immediately. Theodore had fallen in love at first sight. In fact, Theodore hadn't stopped talking about her afterward. He remembered even the tiniest details, things most people would never notice. For example, he remembered how short her fingernails were cut, or the tiny mole between her thumb and index finger. Calvin had even joked, asking if Theodore was a pervert for noticing such insignificant things. He must have been going crazy, Calvin had thought. But to Theodore, those details were everything. Just as Theodore was debating whether to enter Lily's room, Seymour appeared. She said she heard that Lily had fainted and came to check on her. Assuming Lily was probably asleep, she decided it wasn't the right time and walked with Theodore back to his office. On the way, she asked if he still hadn't regained his memory. She assured him it wasn't an important memory, so he shouldn't force himself. Still, she advised him to continue living with Lily as he had before. Anyway, she said, she'd be leaving the family soon. Theodore was surprised. Why would she leave? Meanwhile, back at Hessen's estate, his brother immediately questioned him about the situation. Knowing Theodore had lost some of his wits, Hessen secretly thought that one day, he would make Theodore kneel before him. Once Lily recovered, Theodore sat beside her and asked why she had been dressed as a maid that day. Villagers had warned him that a member of the Everett family was seen posing as a maid named Lee to distribute food from Valentino Castle. Theodore hoped Lily would be honest. He asked if she had really been helping the villagers in secret. Lily didn't want to be praised for it. She was also curious, if Theodore found out she had done it sincerely, would he be touched? But no, she wouldn't be happy even if he was. So she simply said it was a hobby, something she did when she was bored. Theodore then pulled out a bottle from her room. Medicine he had found. It turned out to be a sleeping pill made from a highly potent herb. Regular use could severely damage her health. Shocked, Theodore asked if she had really been using it daily. Lily admitted she had trouble sleeping and used it often. Furious, Theodore burned the bottle with magic and warned her never to take it again. She mentioned that she'd taken 2 pills the previous night. Her body had developed resistance, so she increased the dose. Theodore rushed to her room and destroyed all her medication, shouting that it was poison. He couldn't believe she knew the side effects and still took it. Sitting beside her, Theodore softly said he knew he had treated her cruelly in the past. Though they couldn't undo it, he wanted to mend things. Lily quietly asked how they could fix something already shattered. She let the teacup fall from her hand. As the shards cut her skin and blood trickled down, she looked at her hand and asked, "How can you fix something broken into pieces?" Instead of answering, Theodore called for a doctor. Lily cried, telling him it would be better if he left. Later, Charlotte, knowing about the pills, asked Lily what she planned to do. Lily smiled and said she'd stop using them. Charlotte was overjoyed, as she long wished her mistress would quit them. Lily said she'd try scented candles instead. While they talked, the doctor Theodore had personally arranged arrived. She said she'd been asked by the Duke to care for Lily's health. Lily wondered if the doctor would be dismissed once Theodore regained his memory. The doctor, Jane, said she would replace the pills with a harmless herbal mix. But after examining Lily, her expression darkened. Lily's health was poor. Her immunity was weak, blood circulation unstable. In short, she was as fragile as an old woman. But with care she could recover. Trying to change her mood, Lily later went to the library with Charlotte. She picked a book for her and sat beside her. Charlotte, an orphan, had learned to read in a convent, but it still surprised many. That's why Lily often personally brought her to the library. Meanwhile, rumors spread of the Duke and Duchess reconciling. People gossiped about Theodore gifting Lily a blue opal necklace. At a tea house, the girls admired the gesture, though one suggested Lady Adeline was more suited to such a gift. That girl, not thinking, asked Adeline if she had heard about the necklace. Adeline laughed and said, though she and Theodore had been childhood friends, she had no idea what happened between a married couple. Coincidentally, the Crown Prince and Princess of Francis were also at the tea house, eavesdropping. Amused, the prince declared he would invite the Duke and Duchess to this year's hunting festival. It would be the first time the Valentino couple attended together, a sign of improvement worth celebrating. Adeline decided she would visit Venice soon to see if the rumors were true. Still, Theodore's memory loss was kept secret. And for Lily, the hardest part wasn't the memory. It was the change in Theodore's behavior. It was starting to feel like their relationship had healed. And when Theodore called her by name now, it made her uneasy. Though their relationship seemed to be healing, Lily still felt uneasy whenever Theodore called her name with unusual affection. It felt unnatural. After her injury, Theodore had kept his distance, and Lily believed he had finally given up. But in truth he hadn't. He had simply held himself back. She soon realized he had been quietly lingering near her, sending flowers and gifts. Then, just the day before, he lost control and approached her again. Theodore informed Lily of the Crown Prince's hunting invitation. She agreed to attend, but only for the sake of their public image. She had once thought about reconciling with him, but it felt foolish. The past couldn't be undone unless it was confronted. To Lily, this kinder version of Theodore seemed like a dream. He said he'd try to win a prize for her, something she would have once yearned for. But now she couldn't accept such kindness in place of all the pain she had endured. It felt like a shallow illusion. Seeing the hope in Theodore's eyes, Lily chose to be honest. She said she accepted the invitation only because she was the Duchess. She expected nothing more from him. Her voice rose as she asked how she could ever trust him again. He had abandoned her when she needed him most, letting her suffer under Owen's cruelty. She reminded him that broken things couldn't always be fixed. Lily ran from the room, her mind flooded with memories of Theodore's coldness and the ridicule she had faced. She could never forget how he left her alone at that party, humiliated and surrounded by vile people, like they were waiting to devour her. Even if she wanted to move on, didn't she have the right to resent him? Theodore ran after her, embraced her, and apologized repeatedly. But Lily pushed him away in anger. How could he claim to care when he remembered nothing? She couldn't accept that. Why had he changed just because of his amnesia? Looking into her eyes, Theodore insisted there was some misunderstanding. He promised to uncover the truth and fix everything. To Lily, that sounded absurd. How could someone solve a problem they didn't even remember? To Theodore, losing his memory was a strange blessing. The first thing he felt after the accident was love for Lily. He didn't know why he had never expressed it before. But Lily didn't want to hear any of it. He had once treated her like property, judging her by her family status, never listening to her side. She had already given everything up. For a long time she lived like a ghost, knowing that once divorced, she would fall into Lennon's clutches again. Her only escape plan was to end her life when there was nothing left to lose. But then Charlotte saved her, offering a new path, a new hope. Lily stared at Theodore and asked what would happen if his memories returned before the truth was found. She begged him to stop this pointless conversation. Before leaving, Theodore could only say that he hoped one day she would truly trust him. Later, many servants were dismissed, those who had slandered Lily. This was all Theodore's doing. Meanwhile, Charlotte brought troubling news. It seemed Hassan was secretly dealing in weapons, and Owen had found another wizard. Interestingly, this wizard had appeared around the time of Theodore's accident. Lily wasn't surprised. It was suspicious that a minor head injury had caused memory loss. The Everett family wouldn't just sit by while the Valentino family regained influence. Lily knew she needed answers. She had to investigate the cause of Theodore's injury, which meant getting access to the commander's records. Charlotte understood Lily's plan and took on the task herself. While Charlotte was away, Lily visited Adeline, since both Seymour and Theodore were out. Lily suspected Adeline came to confirm the rumors, and it was clear she had feelings for Theodore. She was probably disappointed by his indifference. He saw her only as a friend. Lily had always been curious about the real Adeline behind her cheerful mask. When they met, Adeline immediately noticed Lily's necklace but said nothing. Instead, she offered tea, claiming it was a gift. Lily thanked her, noting the fragrance. Adeline laughed, mentioning that Theodore loved tea and she couldn't wait for his feedback. Lily silently scoffed. What a clever way to show her closeness with another woman's husband. If Lily hadn't been composed, she might already lost her temper. That's what Adeline wanted, to provoke her and then play the victim. But Lily didn't fall for it. She calmly spoke about the tea's origins and ignored the subtle jabs. Eventually, Adeline asked about the hunting invitation. Lily bluntly stated that she and Theodore would be attending together. She noticed Adeline's expression stiffen. Just then Jane, the maid, rushed in to report a serious issue. Lady Seymour had returned and was accusing Charlotte of stealing the commander's gold. Lily stood quietly outside the room, observing. It was clear Charlotte had been caught up while searching for the knight. Lily didn't know the full story, but she knew two things for certain. Charlotte would never steal, and out of the 5 people present, excluding Lady Seymour, 2 were the true culprits. Watching Seymour prepare to strike Charlotte without proof filled Lily with fury. Charlotte was her closest ally. If she were wrongly dismissed, Lily would be utterly alone in the castle. Lady Seymour had been quietly isolating Lily for over a year and a half, pretending to be friendly while planting eyes and ears around her. Her goal was clear: to leave Lily completely alone and vulnerable. That day, as Charlotte was about to be hit, Lily stepped forward and demanded an explanation. Seymour claimed Charlotte had stolen jewelry, but Lily asked firmly for proof. The only witness, Serene, claimed she saw Charlotte enter the commander's room. Lily listened calmly, then asked how Serene could be so sure. Charlotte, after all, was her personal maid and earned more than most. Why would she need to steal? Lily also questioned whether others had even been searched, which clearly should have been done before accusing anyone. Seymour avoided the question and instead asked why Charlotte was in the commander's room at all. Lily, now confident, explained that Charlotte had been there under her direct orders. How could she possibly steal while following the Duchess's instructions? Running out of patience, Lily ordered everyone to be searched. As expected, the stolen jewelry was found on Serene. Elia, another maid, immediately pointed fingers and scolded her, but Lily cut her off, saying it was no use. Selling the jewelry wouldn't even cover Elia's lover's debts. Lily went further, accusing Elia of orchestrating the entire thing and dragging Serene into it. A panicked Elia denied everything, but Lily ignored her and kept revealing the truth. Seymour turned to Serene in disbelief and asked if it was true. Trembling, Serene confessed that Elia had made her do it. Her family back home was starving. Her youngest sister had pneumonia, and her wages weren't enough. She had no choice. Seymour, however, seemed more concerned with Elia's fiancé. Lily knew Elia couldn't tell the whole truth. Seymour had arranged Elia's engagement, but Elia had recently fallen in love with an actor, and worse, she was pregnant. Lily had overheard her secret visit to the village doctor. Desperate, Elia had planned to steal enough money to disappear before her lies were exposed. Now exposed, Seymour furiously ordered both maids to be locked up. She turned to Lily, visibly shaken, and commented on how much she knew about the Valentino household's inner workings. Lily smiled and said it was her responsibility as lady of the house to know. Seymour narrowed her eyes and asked if Lily had anything else to say. Lily looked at her directly and said yes. She should stop creating trouble for her people. If it happened again, she wouldn't stay silent. Provoked, Seymour slapped Lily hard across the face. Everyone froze. Lily was stunned, not by the slap, but by how threatened Seymour was by the truth. Just then, Theodore burst in, enraged. He rushed to Lily's side, lifted her face gently, and demanded an explanation. Hearing that Seymour had struck her, he lost his temper. There is no excuse for hitting the Duchess, he said coldly. I hope nothing like this happens again. Seymour tried to speak, but he ignored her and led Lily away.